Hello and welcome back, LTX Familia. We are so excited to have you and welcome you back into the Innovators Table. Today, we have this amazing panel for you all to discuss some of the emerging tech trends that our Latinx community is leading the way in. For this specific table, we are going to focus a little bit more on the common understanding of what is the metaverse, the Metaverso, NFTs, crypto, all these words you've probably seen in the news or seen online or seen on social media, and you're probably curious about, but maybe don't quite know what it is. We're also going to share some opportunities and resources on how you can learn a little bit more and how you could even potentially get involved. So you're in for a treat today that we have three amazing folks representing the Web3 Familia, Christian, Orlando, and Francisco, who are going to talk to us a little bit more about what this space is and the group that they represent. But before we dive into the meaty topic that is the metaverse, we're going to talk a little bit more and hear from these folks about what their story is. So Christian, maybe we'll start off with you to share a little bit more. Who are you and what are you passionate about?
For sure. Thank you for having us here, Amber. Appreciate the time. I'm a New Yorker. I'm originally born and raised in Queens, New York. My family immigrated from Ecuador back in the 70s. So we've been here ever since. I'm still a Queens kid. I'm still living in Queens. First gen kid, went to college here in New York City, and then started my career in Wall Street. And I guess to summarize the career, I spent 10 years there as a former investment banker covering the power, utilities, and renewable energy space, covering the U.S. domestic market and also Latin America. At the same time, I was on the board of a non-for-profit called Alpha, so helping there with fundraising initiatives, corporate development, and in 2020 founded a speaker series highlighting Latinx VCs and VC-backed founders that are Latino as well. To continue sort of my career, I've been in the VC space for 2.5 years now, and currently work at a venture capital firm called OP Crypto, where we invest in Web3 early stage projects in the pre-seed and seed stage. And as you mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of Web3 Familia, very happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Francisco, let's go to you next.
Happy to go next. My name is Francisco Izaguirre. My parents are from Mexico and Honduras. I feel like I've grown up in California most of my life and San Diego, and constantly cross the border to Tijuana to have family and to visit family out there, which has been always amazing kind of seeing such a tight culture difference just from like traveling 5 minutes. And it really got me thinking as you get a little older, you start to ask your parents about finance and like the disadvantages and the advantages that they kind of got into. That's kind of how I got into Web3. It's kind of how I got into, before it was called Web3, it was just Bitcoin, and that was always a really interesting concept, and it was more of a unicorn dream. And now we're kind of seeing it unravel into these like beautiful, sophisticated projects that are meant to kind of liberate us in some way. And so that's kind of like why I partnered up with these folks to be a co-founder in Web3 Familia, and I serve more as a technical co-founder. And so I'm happy to dive into those questions after we hear OG's intro here.
Awesome.
I'll jump in then. Orlando Gomez, hey everyone. Also go by my initials OG. First gen Mexican American from the south side of Chicago. Spent most of my career in finance, from private wealth to investment banking, but also did some economic development with the Peace Corps and spent 2 years in Peru before business school. Peru is amazing. Happy to talk about that anytime with anyone. But after business school, went to investment banking and now left investment banking to join a startup. It's a Latinx startup. It's a unicorn, Drift. Shout out to Elias and PC. With Drift, essentially been doing a little bit of VC and Web3 work on the side, and have just been amazed by how much interest there has been in Web3. The things I'm most passionate about are teaching financial literacy and teaching tech literacy, and Web3 is the intersection of both. And it just is reducing barriers to entry for financial services, for education, and for jobs. And that's something so powerful that I'm hoping to explore some more.
I love that. And thank you, folks, because I feel like you're already starting to answer some of those questions that I have lined up for you. But I think to start off, so I was born and raised in California, Francisco. That's why I was like, "Woo, California." My parents are immigrants from Peru. And so I think it's curious, right? I think right now I am a second year MBA student at MIT Sloan. I used to work in the nonprofit sector. The spaces that I was in were very different from where I'm at today, both the vibe and the conversations that people are having. And on campus this last year, right now, when we were bidding for classes, one of the most popular classes was one on NFTs in the Web3 space. And I think that's so curious because everybody wanted to get into it because it's the new sexy thing I think that folks are trying to get involved in. And I think about this at the same time as I think about like my parents, right? What a crazy time for all of you to be involved in a space that didn't really exist when your parents were like, probably right now, like I think your parents are probably like, yeah, sis, like what do you even do? So I guess that's a great way to kind of transition into that first question. Can you all help us demystify a little bit more of that lingo and common misunderstandings around this space and give us a couple of definitions into what is the work that you all are actually doing? And anybody can chime in.
Cisco, I can jump in. In terms of the work that we're doing with Web3 Familia, essentially we function as a community that wants to onboard more Latinos into the space. And in the space, I mean Web3, and that's the space that we're most passionate about because we see the opportunities there. Now, Web3 is many different things. It's essentially, it can be the metaverse, it can be DeFi, decentralized finance, it can be DAOs, which is essentially crypto LLCs or a way to have organizations on chain using the blockchain. And then there's also other things where you can have decentralization, like decentralized social networks, decentralized science. And essentially it all comes down to this concept of what is decentralization and why does it matter? So there's a lot of impact that can happen there. Right now we're used to centralized bodies and centralized forces like a Facebook, or I should say a Meta or a Twitter that has all the data. But when you break it up across the world, across globally, and you give many different owners and users, you have like this new value proposition of like, there's no one central force that has control over everything. And essentially ownership is distributed amongst many different axes. So it's just this new way of interacting with the internet that should be a little bit more fair and just.
Very cool.
To add on to that, when the internet first taught us about how to transfer information, we looked at it and didn't understand the value of data. And so we were giving data everywhere and had no idea that it could be productized, monetized, and even weaponized. And so now that we fast forward like 20, 30 years in, we see how some of these centralized companies hold that data essentially hostage. We see it in social media, we see it in healthcare. And now there's this new network that's been forming, and it's the figuring out how to actually transfer value across a network and value across a wire. And so when we think about something like Bitcoin, or we think about something like NFTs, essentially what we're trying to really focus is like, we want to figure out how to empower people to own the value that they've earned and also own the things that indirectly build value that didn't exist before, which is the part of that data. Because when our parents kind of came to the United States, they were already at such a disadvantage, right? Navigating that kind of system is very, very complex, from financial to healthcare to just about anything, especially when English isn't your first language. And so now we have this global system of finance, this global system of ownership, and these global networks that are decentralized, that are letting people make decisions on where they want to participate with their data. And if they don't like that, they can take their data and go somewhere else.
Francisco, you bring up a really interesting point, and Christian, maybe you can help start answering this question, because what you just said right now, I think, speaks to a bigger issue among the Latinx community here in this country, right? Many of I think just generally, and maybe I'll speak for myself and my family, there's a complicated relationship, right, with wealth, with generational wealth. And so how can Web3 be healing or transformative in this space, right? Because I can think about, like, I would be nervous if my parents got involved in something like this. I'm nervous to get involved in something like this, right? So how can this space be healing? And also, what are some things that we should be cautious about when we're entering in this very, very new universe?
And then I think I'll take a step back here.
Okay.
Right now, there's no structured way of learning Web3 in English. It's very difficult. You know, schools don't teach it. Universities don't teach it at scale. You know, high schools don't teach it, right? So it's either you learn it on your own via, you know, aggregating resources, looking at YouTube videos, reading these white papers, or interacting with people that are building that most of the time, I would say, are very technical. And these are the individuals that have been building sort of the infrastructure for the past decade, if not more, right? So that's one of the reasons why information is key. And historically speaking, right, with any new innovation, sort of Latinos and African Americans have been the last to gain any sort of value from new tech because of just that simple information. You don't know what you don't know, right? So with Web3 Familia, we're addressing that sort of gap by creating a safe space, by being an aggregator of resources, and, you know, being intentional of catering to the Latinx community. We're Latino focused, but we're not Latino exclusive, right? Because everything that we do is both in English and in Spanish. And I think that helps address that lack of, you know, information or awareness that historically, you know, sort of puts us at a disadvantage. And with this new tech today, in my opinion, it's an equalizer. And why do I say that? Because of there being no structured way of learning, if you have exposure to it and you sort of double down and learn the many use cases, there's a way to sort of either build within the blockchain a company leveraging the technology, and sort of you no longer have to go through, you know, I don't know, school or a program or, you know, elite sort of institutions to be a creator or gain value. And basically that's the equalizer, sort of having access to this information and being able to build from there.
Very cool. Very, very cool. So folks, I think right now, like, I imagine our audience that's watching us, hi audience, they're probably curious, right? They're thinking, okay, there's this new space. I have this amazing resource, Web3 Familia. By the way, following you on Twitter, very helpful. So for the folks that are following you all, that are trying to learn a little bit more, like, what opportunities are there for people to get involved, both either like professionally or even with you all?
So, I mean, I could kick it off. I mean, we have, so like I said, we started as a resource aggregator by putting everything together in sort of one app called a Discord, but we've realized that not many people sort of understand or know what that is. So we activated in real life and also online sort of interviews or Twitter spaces on Twitter, where we highlight investors, developers, creators, and sort of just technical folks, founders that are building real use cases on the blockchain. And sort of through those examples, people learn sort of the different ways that the tech could be leveraged. And sort of, I have the privilege that I work at a crypto fund that I get to travel all over the country, going to conferences, sort of, you know, seeking deals. And I've been able to activate in real life events, doing similar things that we do on Twitter, which is, you know, activating panels, interviewing folks, creating a safe space for Latinos to come, meet each other that historically, you know, there hasn't been anything done for us or in Spanish. And sort of for the first time in a while, people have come up to me like, hey, no one has ever done this. This is great. I didn't even know there were other Latinos that were, you know, hackers or builders. And we always try to put like a fun spin to it, and obviously include music or, you know, play some Bad Bunny tunes to keep it nice and funky, you know?
A little cultura. I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And other ways to learn with Web3 is interacting with it. I think that's possibly the most powerful way. You can subscribe to newsletters and podcasts. Bankless has a great newsletter. Milk Road has another great newsletter. So there's a lot of resources out there. but you're going to learn the quickest by setting up a hot wallet and then figuring out what that difference between a hot and a cold wallet is, where a hot wallet is digital, lives in your browser. A cold wallet is this physical wallet that you hold your crypto on. And that might sound intimidating at first, but once you like go through the process, you understand why that's important and the different ways of like custodying your own assets and becoming your own owner. But step one could be open up a MetaMask. Google what MetaMask is. The flow is pretty easy. We have a video on our YouTube that can walk you through that. And then buy cryptocurrency. And you can use any exchanges like a Coinbase, and then just send it from your MetaMask to your Coinbase and back and forth if you want. Any interactions like that, or connecting your wallets to different kind of websites in Web3 are, one, it's fun, but it also teaches you about like, okay, well, what kind of use case can I use to impact my life positively that right now, for instance, like our banks are like not giving us. For instance, settlement times, when we send wires, it takes 4 days to be cleared for the money to be cashed out. With crypto, it's relatively instant. It takes a few seconds for that settlement and that withdrawal, which is amazing. It has a lot of implications abroad.
Yeah, I think what Orlando and Christian are saying really like nails it on the head. I think early on, I've been around for almost a decade now, and you wouldn't find other Latinos that were doing crypto. You'd go to these conferences. It's like one girl, 19 guys, and they're probably mostly white. So you didn't get to really like vibe and get to share the same struggles that you would share typically, or like people that you kind of grew up with. And so like Latinos have a very different context and a different way of learning. Aprendemos juntos la mayoría de veces. Yeah. And so I think that's one thing that's kind of been at least super motivating, and in working with OG and working with Christian and our other co-founder Mags. It's just been amazing figuring out how to struggle together and learn together and realize that like there's a safe space to ask dumb questions. I ask them all the time. I accidentally send money to wrong wallets accidentally all the time. It's really dumb, but it's like it's the learning process. It's the power to learn, and it has to be like wielded respectfully, and ultimately you want to do it with people that you also respect and you feel like you can confide in.
I love that.
And to add to Francisco, in regards to the safe space, right? Something that I like to share is that, you know, in my journey early in my career, sort of, it was very lonely being one of the few Latinos on Wall Street and in investment banking and in general, right? So there's few organizations out there that sort of help with that journey, like Alpha, like the SEOs, like the MLTs of the world, right? That create a community, and sort of that's your safe space to ask all the questions, raise your hand and whatnot, right? So Web3 Familia is basically, we're creating the safe space that I wish I had 10 years ago for this new technology, right? And that's something, sort of a mindset that we all share. And, you know, let's ask the wrong questions together. Let's learn together. Let's mess things up. The technology is still quirky, right? And I would say today, you know, 90% of the global population still isn't even aware of what's happening. You know, we come from a place of privilege. Being in Latinx Quest it's a privileged position to be here today, because you guys sort of have access to individuals that are at the fringes of, you know, new technology. So right. When it comes to safe spaces, this is what we want to do with Web3 Familia, and obviously collectively, you know, with Magdalena, with Francisco and Orlando, we bring sort of our backgrounds and try to, you know, provide as many resources as possible, but always listening to what the community has to say and obviously adjust accordingly.
Fantastic. Well, that's actually a beautiful call to action to sort of close us off here in this time that we've had together. I thank you all so much for sharing a little bit more. It sounds like Web3 definitely keeps it familia oriented, culture focused as well, which is really important. So folks, just make sure that as you are kind of listening to these folks here today and learning a little bit more, to follow Web3 Familia and their amazing resources that they have available for all of you today. This is a very new space. And so thank you to the three of you and the rest of your co-founders for being those trailblazers in this space, and for inviting the rest of the folks in our audience to join you all. So thank you all so much. And we'll see you back, audience, in the next Innovators Table.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Follow Web3 Familia.
Yeah.